Hey guys, it's Amandalyn, and I'm here with another sketchbook tour for something that I'm trying for the first time. I'm trying to do Posca Markers this time around, 30 days worth of it. There are a few days where I skipped and had to make up for it the next day, just because this month has been very trying for a lot of people. And also, my initial findings, I had to change my paper, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So yeah, essentially I've become obsessed with these and I wanted to try them. I wanted to try Copics, but they're very expensive. These guys you can find in a pack and it was a bit more affordable, so I wanted to go with it. And I guess I didn't realize how paint markers work on paper. It kind of pulls up the fibers, so I changed paper midway. Also, yeah, I'll just talk a bit more about it. So this is the first drawing I did, and I did this on mixed media paper, and I guess this is where I learned that you really need to push out a lot of the color in order to saturate it fully. I guess I thought it was a bit easier because I watched a lot of people online doing them, and it just seemed like they were just going through it like normal, but in reality they were completely saturating the page and then going through with it. I didn't realize that till later. So this is a little pie guy. That's the first one. The second one is going to be of my boyfriend's family's dog, in some like fun pop art kind of colors, where I had the same kind of situation. I'm trying to figure it out as best as I could. This one I decided to outline with the black marker as well. Just trying to play also with a couple of colors at a time, as opposed to feeling the need to work with a bajillion colors, just till I get the handle of it. Plus I only had a pack of 8, I believe, the first time around. Some cats. Also trying to figure out how to work with the outlining, working out with overlapping. Like here you could still see the black through it, so I think either, maybe actually this would be a good time to see. It needs to be totally dry, and even though I waited a while, I think you need to wait a while longer. This guy, just trying to, again, mess around with a couple of colors as opposed to going crazy. And like I said, I don't have a lot of colors, so I couldn't really use like a darker blue for, well, in this one I do have 2 blues, but I don't have a whole plethora of them, so I wasn't able to do like a darker blue for shadows and a lighter blue for highlights. I kind of want to make it as is. Typical New York cup. And this is kind of where I had some issues with the pencil and figuring out how dark it needs to be to cover up the pencil lining. You can see I tried to fill in some with the white marker over here, but if I do that, I need to fill in the whole thing. I can't just, it looks like white out, so that's not good. I couldn't figure out what color to use for the background because at the time I still only had the 8-pack. Clearly having a depressed emo kid day. I just wanted to draw this kind of monster blob and use a different color for the outline as opposed to black. These portions are horrible over here, but I also initially am had a difficult time with this kind of tip. I don't know if you could see, maybe it's the black you see, because it's rounded. I noticed in a lot of videos people have ones that are a bit more pointed. The reason I didn't get those was because I noticed you fill in a lot in the background. I have a couple that are like this, but I bought these individually, and individually they're a bit, they add up pretty quickly price-wise. So then I went to the store to get marker paper because the fibers were coming up, and I just wanted to see, this was the most affordable paper marker I could kind of find. People were recommending some that were a bit thicker, but it was just too expensive, to be honest, just for somebody who's learning and practicing. But at the same time, you want to be cautious because the fibers do rip up the tips on here. I think I have a few where you could see it's kind of like pulls up the fibers, and I do know though that this is actually, you could pull this out and switch it to the opposite side, if that makes sense. Anywho, so this is just some practice over here. I need to get better with the lines, obviously. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just kind of messing around and trying to see. Mushrooms are always fun to draw. And then again, this time around, sticking with the same monochromatic kind of vibe. All right, fun breakfast. Always have to do a fun breakfast. People seem to really like the toast Pop-Tart guy. And last time I did some eggs as well for it. So this is where I started to try to overlap the colors. I did my best to, you can see here, like I left some negative space when I was coloring it in, and then I went back in versus trying to go over it, or you could see the pink through it. Also at this point, I finally gave in and bought more markers. I bought another set that I believe is called like natural tones, but they're pretty much pastels and are definitely not natural tones. I don't really know what else to say on that one. But yeah, I wanted to mess around with not black outlines because I feel like using different colors, especially red, it just gives it something much more interesting to look at, and it's not as graphic, I guess. But over here as well, like I went over the color, I waited till dry, went over, and you could still see the blue seeping through. So I think you need to wait till it's dry like a day later, which I don't know. I've seen a lot of videos where people go in. I finally decided to try a portrait because I had the color, had some colors that I thought would work a little bit better. Anyway, let me backtrack. So I finally decided to try a portrait and go in with it. Mostly because I also had a darker color that could be a shadow color where it wouldn't be too noticeable, like as opposed to just using like a blue on a red, which I mean which would be really interesting. I need to get better at being smooth with the lines over here. I have a very sketchy way of drawing, and you can notice it here, but also finding out the best way to get the paint to come out smooth. And I'm also trying to mess around with how I draw eyes a bit more. I like doing a simple thing just for consistency because my background is in animation. It's harder to draw really intricate eyes. I tried to draw a seashell. You know, like I have always said, this is a sketchbook, so it's just to try around and mess around and see what works and what doesn't work. And nothing's gonna be perfect. Not nothing, but you see all these sketchbook tours and everyone's stuff is absolutely pristine and perfect and deserves to be framed. You can make mistakes and experiment. That's how you're gonna learn the medium. For this one, I did kind of what I mentioned before. We're using a different color for the shadows that isn't necessarily what would go with this color, right? We would probably think of like a darker purple that has a little bit more of a blue tone, but I'm just trying some stuff out. As always, I love cutie pie, little kawaii kind of thing. So here's some strawberry milk. I Googled this before writing it, and I'm pretty sure it says strawberry milk. Let's hope so. Because I just copied a picture of something I found online. Yeah, it needs to be a bit cleaner, but we're learning. So then I finally was like, I need to focus on drawing some people for a minute, and I just watched Queen's Gambit like everyone else, and I loved the clothing, so I figured let's just try. It's loosely inspired by, it's obviously not gonna look exactly the same as the person because I try not to, I mean, if you're a fan of something that's amazing and you want to draw it, that's great, but I just kind of needed references and want to get better at drawing people in general. I wasn't trying to exactly replicate what I was seeing with that. I do want to get better at fabric, coloring in fabric and drawing that. And also figuring out when to use outlines for people's faces versus the rest of their body, and when to work on that. And as I mentioned, I'm trying different eyes, so a little bit more detailed. This is also another picture from the show, I believe. I just really liked the clothing on this. I probably should have used a darker color for the shadows as opposed to the light because this looks like a highlight and this looks like shadow. Again, we're limited in our palette, so we're doing what we can do. This one came out a bit better on the clothing though, I think. At least filling it in. So another one. And this is the same thing that I was questioning before, is like, when do you not put in an outline and when do you leave it? Because I wanted to do finer details on the face because it's so small and I only have the thicker pens or markers. I used the thinner one, what color I had, and I think blue works out pretty well for that. I like how the hair came out over here as well. All right, back to the animals. Tried to figure out what animals I like, and then as I mentioned in the very beginning, I didn't have enough colors to kind of do like darker and lighter kind of shadows, but now that I bought that second pack, I've had at least like one secondary color that I can use for it. When I say secondary, I don't mean in the color wheel, I mean another color that I can use to work with for it to be cohesive. I do like how the black looked in this one, but same kind of thing. In order to make it definitive, I needed a darker color for that one. I like these two the best. Little cute hedgehog guy. Okay. This is where I was trying to draw something without using any of to outline it, as opposed to just using the color and to work with the negative space. It's from Marie Antoinette, I think is a reference. I'm just trying to draw a cute character on its own, and had the same kind of thing again, where I started to outline it and then I was like, oh, why did I do that? I didn't need to do that at all. So that's another little character. Again, trying to figure out like how I'm going to work on eyes. So this one, I just wanted to draw faces. I think I looked up some faces, so the references might be familiar if you're looking up online some faces to draw. Maybe I looked up cartoon or Posca kind of faces. So I apologize if they're a bit similar. I was just trying to figure out how people are drawing faces without the outlines and just kind of going for it with this versus this where people are using the outlines, and trying to figure out which one I like best. Or you could just use it to separate it, but it's not too noticeable, where I feel like this, it kind of blocks it out. I also messed up on that one pretty bad. But I do like how the hair came out on this one as well. Okay, so here's Joey Ramone, the cat. Just wanted to, again, use more actual references, get into the hang of drawing. This I don't like at all, but it happened. I was, again, trying to figure out how dry it needs to be before I could go back over it. Just trying to draw a cat. Not a fan. It exists though. That's what it's for, practicing. Here's some botanical practice. Botanical practice. And then this is where I started drawing some houses. I think that I Googled like Victorian homes or something, and this might have popped up on Pinterest and probably had a lot more pieces to it. But I just kind of wanted to get a reference for a basic shape of a house and the angles. And for this one, I just wanted to try to use colors that wouldn't necessarily make the most sense, but work in the correct way. So for example, like the darker red is still the shadows, the darker green also are the shadows, that kind of way, but because they're not typical for a home, if that makes sense. Although I do think the house that I found might have been green and red, just maybe not this shade's green red. Use my friend's dog as a reference for this one. Again, trying to do the same kind of thing where I'm stepping out with the colors a little bit. And the same concept for the house. I liked how that house came out, but I wanted to go back to using the colors that initially I purchased, since I felt like I wasn't using them enough. And I was relying too much on the pastels. As I mentioned earlier, just trying to work on different eyes and trying to figure out what works best for me and to practice. I found a video where somebody drew like 100 eyes or something of that nature and was pretty inspired by that one. Pumpkinhead boy. Just trying to draw characters and learn how to, I need to work on like portions way more, obviously. But I did want to have a really big head. Sometimes I see character designs where characters have like really big heads and these small bodies and it just works perfectly, and then I do it and it's like not quite right. So I just wanted to give it a try on that one. So I'm working on a personal project that has some ghosts in it, and I wanted to kind of mess with how they would look. So I like the idea of them being blue with this darker outline, but then still having a kind of aura around them. I just want to make sure it doesn't look like something from Pixar. Not that that would be bad. All right. So if you know me, you know that I'm obsessed with risographs, and I've wanted to learn how to do it for a while, but because of COVID, there aren't very many workshops open, if any. And so I kind of wanted to use the concept of the same colors, like how with risographs you could maybe print with like 2 colors, but because you're using different gradients and overlapping, you could come up with other colors. That's my understanding from what I've watched about it. Again, if I take a workshop and learn something new, I will go back and fact check myself. And also I started to watch more fantasy shows on Netflix, and it reminded me of why I love sci-fi and fantasy, and wanted to kind of create that. I love when people draw little poofy balls for greenery. I'm just trying to figure that out. So this is just kind of a big experiment page, as a sketchbook should be. And this is the same kind of thing again, kind of just trying to stick with that theme, and doing it kind of from off the top of my head and sticking with colors that you might find in a risograph. And that's the end. They don't stick very well in this book. But thanks for watching. So I guess what I found the most helpful about this was sticking with some basic colors and learning how to utilize them, and also being more creative with my colors, overlapping, things of that nature, being more bold with it, because they're not, I mean, you can blend them, I believe, if you get enough out of the marker and you use another one, you can blend them and have gradients. But for me, what appealed the most was the more graphic, solid color kind of look of it. But yeah, so I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do next. I think I need to get better at drawing people, so maybe I'll do gesture drawings or character sketches. It's gonna be hard though without completely taking reference from other people's work, although that is how we learn. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time. That's all I got.